to Mayor Jenny Durkan.
Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you everyone for being here and bearing with us as we work through our technical difficulties. You know, there aren't that many things in 2020 that we have been able to announce that are just pure good news. We did it at the end of last week on the Seattle Promise, and we're able to do it today on some investments we're making through the Seattle Housing Levy. I will tell you that every December as mayor, I get to announce NOFAs, and we know that coming into this role as mayor, I was facing a huge affordability crisis in our city. And Emily Alvarado, who's here, has done everything she can to be innovative around how do we get more housing, where we need it, how we need it, particularly in our communities of color that are most susceptible to gentrification and displacement. For far too long, families in Seattle could earn a living, but still could not be able to live in Seattle because of the high cost. More and more people who worked in Seattle weren't able to live here. And we saw that gap was growing before COVID, and COVID has accelerated so many of the disparities that we saw before that. Our low and moderate income families are essential workers. They're the people keeping the businesses going that we've relied on throughout COVID. They're also our delivery drivers. They teach at our children's schools or online. They are in our stores. They are the people who literally had no choice but to go to work so that we could live our lives. It's in the city as well, our sanitation workers, our park workers, Seattle Department of Transportation workers, as well as crews we see, the construction and laborers who are there building the buildings of the future like the arena, Waterfront for All, and other projects. This public health and economic crisis has only exacerbated our existing affordability and homelessness issues. We also know that hardest hit in this economic and pandemic crisis have been our communities of color. Our Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities have disproportionately shouldered both the economic harm and the health harms. We have made record investments through our housing lever since 2017. In the past 3 years, we have made historic investment in low income, affordable housing, and this year was no exception. I have to, give praises to Emily and her team, but also just to the great projects and people with the projects who've come forward to think about how we can be more livable as a city. And this year you've seen us already, but we've done multiple NOFAs because we're trying to get money out the door in investments that can change affordability. In response to this extraordinary circumstances the city has faced this year, we were able to increase our investments in housing yet again by putting into action innovative new models that will help us get more housing up as efficiently as possible. In 2020, we've made historic investments of about $116 million through 3 rounds of funding. And I think this is the first year we've done 3. We've been pushing to do 2, and this year we're doing 3, and Emily will be able to tell you more about that. In total, these investments will support 1,439 new affordable homes, including home ownership opportunities. And we've talked a lot about that in the last 2 years, about how we're trying to get more home ownership opportunities, because it is one of the ways that people can start to build wealth, and it gives people roots in the community in a different way. And for the first time in a decade, the Office of Housing offered a spring round and a fall round, and now we're doing the 3rd round. With that in mind, the city also launched its first ever permanent supportive housing pilot program, emphasizing new approaches to completing much needed housing much more quickly and efficiently. And I have to again give Emily and her team, together with our providers, real praise for all they've done to be innovative, to bring the cost down so that we can get more housing out of our dollars, but to also be innovative about how we can get it built more quickly. As we've worked to increase the efficiency and expediency of our housing investments, we've also continued to improve the Office of Housing's long track record of positive racial equity, and particularly the outcomes in our communities of color through strong partnerships with Black-led organizations and other organizations led by people of color. Affordable housing is the key to the future. It's the key to advancing Seattle's racial equity goals on so many levels. Our city-funded low-income affordable housing has a long history of serving people of color. We know that our housing costs have skyrocketed so much, it has added to the pressures of gentrification and displacement. Our city-funded low-income and affordable housing is located across Seattle neighborhoods of high opportunity with reliable, frequent transit, great schools, parks, access to healthcare, and healthy food. Because we know that housing is one piece of it, a critical piece of it, but community health and resilience is also so important. City-funded affordable housing is also located in neighborhoods at high risk of displacement, where communities, and particularly our BIPOC communities, are at risk of being pushed out. By investing in permanently affordable rental and home ownership opportunities in these neighborhoods, we're able to stem the tide of displacement and foster mixed income, sustainable, resilient communities. Shortly, you'll hear from Sam Cameron from Mount Zion about how city-funded, low-income, affordable housing also helps preserve important, culturally and historically relevant neighborhood hubs through trusted partnerships with community-based organizations, like the partnership we have with Mount Zion Baptist Church, a truly historic church and organization in our community. Not only was I fortunate enough as mayor to designate it as a historic place, it is not the building, it is the people and the spirit and their commitment to the city that is also of historic significance. You'll also hear another example of this kind of partnership from Brett D'Antonio from Habitat for Humanity, a real leader worldwide in building affordable housing, about an investment in South Park, a neighborhood on the brink of gentrification and displacement, a neighborhood that has bore so much of the burden of our environmental injustice. But next up, I won't tell you all about that. Next up, I'm going to let Emily Alvarado, Director of our Office of Housing, share with you more on the creative investments we'll be doing in this round and throughout our city, and all we've been able to do to implement these housing investments over the last few years. So Emily, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for your support of affordable housing and for your support of the Office of Housing. As you all know, home is our family stability. It's the foundation for economic mobility. It's our community resilience. And the pandemic has really shone a spotlight on the importance of having a home, even as it threatens housing stability for many. Housing inequities, though, many of which were created by government policies and practice, existed long before the COVID-19 pandemic. Too many people in Seattle were paying more than half of their income on rent, one paycheck away from losing housing, and too many people could not afford rent based on their fixed incomes. People of color were disproportionately impacted, and COVID, as the mayor said, has exacerbated these challenges. We must do more than craft a housing response to this crisis that returns Seattle to the status quo. We must both stabilize renters and homeowners now and embrace a long-term vision for housing justice that's rooted in racial justice. The investments we announced today are not sufficient to solve Seattle's affordable housing crisis, but these investments reflect our continued commitment to act with urgency and undo failures in the existing housing system. Today celebrates equitable housing investments that will serve Seattle for generations to come. Anthony, first slide. Thank you. Today's announcement includes all affordable rental and homeownership awards made by the Office of Housing in 2020. In total, we invested $115.8 million to support the creation and preservation of 1,439 rental apartments and for-sale homes. This includes the 599 units serving homeless individuals that was announced earlier this year as part of the city's first ever permanent supportive housing pilot. Our office is fortunate to continue to make these significant investments even in challenging years like this, thanks to the availability of reliable ongoing fund sources like the voter-approved Seattle Housing Levy and programs like mandatory housing affordability. Next slide, please. Through our combined investment, the city continues to affirmatively further fair housing, working to dismantle segregation and reverse the legacy of disinvestment in BIPOC communities. This year, like many other years, we made investments in affordable housing across the city, in high opportunity neighborhoods and in neighborhoods facing displacement, and all in areas with access to reliable, frequent transit. Next slide, please. This spring, as the mayor said, we released the first in a decade spring NOFA. Through it, we invested $31.4 million to create 473 new apartments. Through this NOFA, we were able to seize time-sensitive real estate opportunities and expedite delivery of affordable housing. Specifically, we funded Polaris at Lake City by Inland Development, Link Studios by Mount Baker Housing Association, and Fremont Eclipse by GMD Development. Fremont Eclipse on North 39th Street in Fremont, we were able to take advantage of a pre-permitted site, a ready-to-go project that used a unique financing structure and, above all, we're pleased to say is already under construction. Next slide, please. This fall, we released a NOFA and are pleased to announce a total of $21.8 million, of which $15.8 million is going to create 180 new rental homes. Through these investments, we were able to focus on achieving racial equity outcomes, including new partnerships with community-based organizations, increasing power, and addressing displacement. Specifically, we funded Mount Zion Senior Housing at 19th by Mount Zion Housing Development, and you'll hear from Sam later, and Elizabeth Thomas Homes. This development from Fame Equity Alliance is located in Rainier Beach, a neighborhood experiencing displacement, and we're pleased to fund Fame and the Equity Alliance of Washington. Fame is the oldest Black church in Seattle, and we're pleased to support their vision for addressing the affordable housing crisis. I'd like to point out that in this building, over half of the apartments will serve families with 2 and 3 bedroom units. And Fame EAW plans to use community preference policy to attract returning displaced residents to the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Through our rental housing NOFA this fall, we're also able to support reinvestment and rehabilitation of 154 homes. An important part of the Office of Housing's work is ensuring that existing affordable housing is sustainable, safe, and healthy for residents. Specifically, we funded Turner Scott House by DESC and Fifth and Seneca by the YWCA. The YWCA's Fifth and Seneca building is the agency's headquarters. It's a landmark, and we are making investment to support earthquake retrofits, system upgrades, and to update single-room occupancy units into studios to improve livability for homeless women. Next slide, please. We're also pleased to make investments of $2.58 million in Seattle Housing Levy funds to produce 33 new permanently affordable for-sale homes by Habitat for Humanity. This continues our recent emphasis and expansion on increasing homeownership that has been deeply supported by Mayor Durkan. Thank you for your support of permanently affordable homeownership. These homes will be sold at an affordable sales price now, roughly between $175,000 to $275,000 per home, and will remain affordable upon resale. Through these homes, we support both family equity, which has been denied to many BIPOC households, balanced with community stability. In addition to the 3 new developments seen here, the 410 apartments in Capitol Hill, South Park Cottages in South Park, and Trenton 4 in Westwood, Habitat will support 3 homes that will be acquired and rehabilitated. Next slide, please. Earlier this year, this summer, we announced the city's first ever permanent supportive housing pilot, committing 2 years of Seattle housing levy dollars to produce almost 600 apartments for people experiencing homelessness. We're now actively shepherding these projects through the financing and construction process, and we look forward to them being open to serve high needs homeless people. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to recognize all of the work of the staff at the Office of Housing for their often unseen but incredibly impactful work recommending and effectuating sound, sustainable public investments. Incredible kudos to our capital investment manager, Lori Olson, and the team, Tom Mack, Elsa Kings, Rosie Zhao, Jerome Burns, and a special acknowledgement this year to Charles Mason, who has the dual role of a lender and the co-chair of our office's Race and Social Justice Change Team. Next, I'm happy to introduce Brett D'Antonio, CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Seattle, King County, who has really stepped up as an effective partner providing permanently affordable homeownership and doing it in partnership with community. Brett.
Thanks, Emily, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Habitat for Humanity, Seattle, King County, I'm honored here not only to thank the mayor and the Office of Housing for your ongoing investment in our work, but to talk a little bit about this support and what its role in serving families in Seattle's communities. As mentioned, 2020 for many, including in the housing industry, has been quite a unique year. And as we've adapted, even more significant is the impact that the pandemic has had on the ability for low-income working families to access affordable housing. As we've been through the year, many families in the Habitat pipeline, like so many others in Seattle, were already working 2 or 3 hourly at-risk jobs. Many in the medical field or the service industries. And like the city, we've also seen that this crisis has had a deeper impact on BIPOC communities, with the loss of businesses, higher rates of unemployment, and being more susceptible to contracting the virus because they work in essential positions. And that's why the mayor and the Office of Housing's responsive actions to the funding of housing programs, including permanent affordable home ownership, like Habitat provides, has really been critical to address these increasing needs. As Emily mentioned, in 2020, the Office of Housing funded our new construction projects, as well as free homes that we're able to acquire and put into a permanent affordability model. This is a big investment that has helped us build a pipeline of 185 affordable units that are really greatly needed in the Seattle area. A little bit about the 3 projects that Emily showed on the screen, the first of which, the Duwamish Village Cottages in South Park. This was built with a wonderful partnership with the Duwamish Valley Affordable Housing Coalition. It's a community-led organization, and not only are they helping prevent, they're bringing families back to the neighborhood that were already priced out. And I'm proud to say that those houses are under construction. They've got roofs going on them today. I just saw pictures, so making really good progress there. The Trenton 4 townhomes, as Emily mentioned as well, is another great project. It's using some of the new zoning to be able to increase density where it's needed and get units that are affordable. And also the 410, our first condo project, urban infill, building vertical. There's wonderful opportunities for homeowners in the capital neighborhood to live here and work. So again, really excited that when these are completed, we're going to have 33 low-income families become first-time homeowners. They're going to get to live within a reasonable commute to downtown. They've got great transit options. These are friendly communities. It's walking distance to good schools, stores, and community services. And not only is it going to be a great place for them to put down roots and call it home, they're gaining the long-term financial stability and equity building that homeownership provides. And that doesn't only benefit them, that benefits our own community as we strengthen and diversify them. So we're incredibly grateful for the visionary approach and the focus and attention that the mayor and the Office of Housing has really given the critical issue of homeownership. And we join them in issues of racial and social injustice with historic barriers to affordable homeownership and resulting wealth gaps. And we continue to eradicate those barriers. So again, I want to thank you for including Habitat and for the city's investment in our projects. We look forward to being part of the larger solution, and we want to continue to work with you all so that everybody has an opportunity for affordable ownership who wants it in the city of Seattle. So thank you again. And next, I'd like to introduce Sam Cameron, Vice President of the Mount Zion Housing Development Board.
Great, thank you, Brett. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Sam Cameron. I am the Vice President of Mount Zion Housing Development. Mount Zion Housing Development is a nonprofit corporation which was incorporated back in 1988. It operates with a seven-member board, which is made up of members of the Mount Zion Baptist Church. As you all know, Mount Zion Baptist Church is a predominantly African-American church with historical ties to the Seattle Central District, located at the corner of 19th and East Madison Street. The mission of the Mount Zion Housing Board is to engage in charitable and educational activities, specifically to provide low-income housing to seniors and handicapped residents of the Seattle Central District. The board currently operates two properties in the area, McKinney Manor, which is a 64-unit building for low-income seniors located at 1916 East Madison Street. And we also operate Price Arms, which is a fourplex facility for low-income families located at 1722 19th Avenue. It is this fourplex that our new project will replace. It will provide 61 additional units, affordable housing units for seniors and veterans. The unit mix consists of 1-bedrooms and studios, and it will also have common area spaces for senior activities and services. Over the years, the Housing Board had explored many opportunities to look at redeveloping the 19th Avenue project, but found that it was not feasible due to the zoning of the area. However, after the passing of the MHA and subsequently the property being upzoned from an NC 240 to an NC 275, it became a feasible project. So we began working with the Office of Housing. And over the last 2 years, we've worked very closely with Director Alvarado and her staff at the Office of Housing to bring about this project. And upon completion, this project will assure that many of our seniors from the congregation and from the community will have an affordable place to stay that is near public transportation, that is near healthcare facilities, and will be within walking distance to the church. We will continue to partner with the Office of Housing to ensure that the church's vision, as well as the mission of the Mount Zion Housing Board for providing affordable housing in the Central District, is achieved. This in turn will help maintain the church's important historic and cultural presence in the Central District. Lastly, on behalf of my board, the Mount Zion Housing Development Board, I'd like to thank the mayor, Director Alvarado, and her staff at the Office of Housing, and our project team that has worked so diligently to put this project together. The members of the Mount Zion Housing Board, our architects, Reluter Architects, our development consultant, Allied Community Development, and our contractor, Beacon Construction. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Anthony.
Thank you very much, Sam, and thank you to all of our speakers. Quick note that as we are short on time and have a 2:30 hard stop, I would ask that our reporters please ask a single question, and we will not be providing follow-up today. But we can follow up later, so please send those questions my way. Our first question will come from Omari Salisbury, Converge Media, followed by Sydney Brownstone from the Seattle Times. Omari, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say congratulations on this good news. It's good to get this good news out of City Hall. As you know, Converge affordable housing is one of the issues that's paramount to the community that we serve. So congratulations to all the awardees out there. Only one question today. It's also another an email to the mayor and to Director Alvarado. Want to direct this question to Sam Cameron. You know, the Black church has traditionally been the largest landowner in the Central District. As demographics have now shifted in the community, how important is it for organizations there like Mount Zion and First AME to be able to use the land that they do have to provide affordable housing, especially for those that have been displaced, the legacy residents, African Americans that have been displaced from the Central District, to provide a space for them to come home? Meaning, like, is this it, or are you guys continuing to push for more projects, or are you going to develop more property that you have there in the Central District?
in the Central District. As you know, and as you mentioned, that most of the Black churches own quite a bit of property in the Central District, and unfortunately, most of those properties are used for parking lots. And I have been going around to various churches. I've worked with certainly Mount Zion, of which I'm a member, and I also work with Tabernacle. And I am certainly close friends with a lot of members over at First AME Church, and trying to convince them that parking lots is not the highest and best use for the property. So we will be working certainly with our people at Mount Zion. We have a very close relationship with the trustees at Mount Zion, and we will be working with them in the future development of some of the vacant properties that they have in their block between 20th and 19th and East Pine and Madison Street. So this is very much on our radar screen. This is certainly not our last project. It's been a long time since we have developed a new construction project, but we have our board on board, and we are ready to move on to other things once we get this one done.
Thank you very much, Sam. Mayor, I see you've unmuted yourself. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add briefly is this has been a priority coming in and working with both First AME, Mount Zion, but perhaps Emily can address. We've been talking to and approaching a number of the traditional Black churches in the central area to see what we can do in the city to help on investments, maybe even zoning to provide more housing, because we, as you noted, Omari, they are some of the largest landowners, and we're at a time when we're really looking for ways to both keep people from being displaced or bring people back who've been displaced. I don't know if Emily, you want to talk more about some of those projects, or we can send Omari some information.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to recognize that you announced just earlier this week or last week implementation of a state law that allows us to provide additional zoning capacity to religious institutions and faith-based institutions like Mount Zion, where they redevelop property for affordable housing. We're now doing environmental review. We welcome public comment, but that's one of the tools in the toolbox that we're putting into place as soon as we can to help unlock churches for themselves the opportunity to create affordable housing. We have a pipeline of potential partnerships with churches, organizations in the Central District and in other neighborhoods, and we look forward to that partnership, providing technical assistance, our support, and our financial resources to make sure that folks can utilize their property to support low-income people and to address displacement.
Thank you very much. Our next question will come from Sydney Brownstone, Seattle Times, followed by Andy Engelson, South Seattle Emerald. Sydney, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Anthony. This question is for Mayor Durkan. So you said that combating homelessness would be one of your priorities for the time left in office now that you're not running for re-election. Past today's announcement, what do you want to do and what do you think you can do on homelessness in the time that you have left?
So I think we can answer, thanks Sydney for the question, and we can give you more information in terms of kind of the overall arching plan. But with regard to housing, I think Emily was able to outline one of the key things we have to do is provide more permanent supportive housing. And we're working with the county and other regional partners to see if we can do that, not just in Seattle, but on a region-wide basis. Because as you know, that is probably the most successful intervention we have to really end homelessness, to have long-term housing for those people, particularly that have some behavioral health challenges. So we will continue to look for ways to increase the amount of permanent supportive housing. We also need more affordable housing, period. As great as this announcement is, and it's fantastic to have this good news, we all know that we need to really significantly increase those. So I will continue to work with Olympia to see if we can make more requirements upon other jurisdictions to also be providing affordable housing and permanent supportive housing, as well as resources for people experiencing homelessness. I think that has to be eventually one of the tools that the new regional authority does, is to make sure that every city in our region is providing the resources they need for people in their community to stay in communities and to be healthy.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next and unfortunately final question will come from Andy Engelson, South Seattle Emerald. Andy, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. This question is for Mayor Durkan. So based on your past opposition to the council's jumpstart tax, much of which would have gone to funding affordable housing, I wonder if this represents a turnaround in your view. And I wonder if you could give us some specific dollar figures about what sorts of increases in affordable housing you'll be seeking in your last year in office in the 2022 budget cycle.
So thank you for the question. Couple things. One is I did not veto the jumpstart tax. I did not sign it because there was concerns about some of the legality issues. Those revenues are not used in these housing rounds. These come from the MHA as well as the housing levy. We'll be looking for every tool we can to add money to our affordable housing and increase that. Earlier in my administration, we'd formed the middle income housing workforce group to see what ways we could have so that our workforce could stay in Seattle. We had nurses and people who are essential workers today who couldn't afford to live in the city. And some of those people are traveling very long distances to get to the jobs in the city during the COVID crisis. So we are looking for additional revenues there. As you know, I wanted a regional payroll tax, and I'm still hoping that Olympia will have a regional payroll tax so we get additional funding for housing that way. I think we have to use all the tools in the tool belt, and that's going to require zoning changes. It's going to require I would like to get greater property tax exemptions so that people who are providing affordable housing can perhaps pay a lower rate of property tax and get subsidized that way. We need more financing for affordable housing. And then finally, the most important way that we can have affordable housing is to pay workers what they deserve. We need to have more pathways to prosperity for everyone in Seattle. Make sure that the wages they're paid are fair and the wages they're paid can actually support them in our city.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you to all of our speakers today. Thank you as well to our press corps for your understanding on our late start and our hard stop. I want to say thanks to everyone who joined us and that we will now be concluding today's press conference.
Thanks very much.